What if one ordinary night, humanity discovered we were not alone, and the visitors weren't bringing peace, but chains? What if Earth's greatest war wasn't fought between nations, but between species? In the next few moments, you will witness betrayal, sacrifice, and a battle that will change the galaxy forever. Stay with us because by the end of this story, you will realize why humanity is the worst species anyone could ever think about conquering. Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story, where we dive into the fiercest battles, the deepest betrayals, and the wildest first contacts the galaxy has ever seen. Before we jump into the full story, tell me, if aliens invaded Earth tomorrow, would you fight, run, or negotiate? Comment below, like this video, and subscribe to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story to stand with us in every war among the stars. And today's secret code to comment is Defiance Rising. If you type it, we'll know you're part of our frontline resistance. Now, let's begin. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the alarm at NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Station tore through the silence like a chainsaw through silk. Dr. John Miller jerked awake, cold coffee splattering across his crumpled shirt. He blinked at the screaming screens, the flashing warnings, the sheer absurdity of being yanked from half-sleep by the possible end of the world. For a moment, he thought it was just another glitch. Another cosmic burp misread by underpaid software. But no. The data was as clear as the ache in his spine. Something massive was coming. What's happening? John croaked, dragging himself to the console like a man condemned to witness his own funeral. His assistant, a jittery grad student whose only previous emergency had involved a vending machine swallowing his dollar, was already hammering at the keys. Unknown object. Approaching fast. Beyond Pluto's orbit, he gasped. It's changing course. John squinted at the numbers, mind still sticky with dreams. Comets don't steer. Asteroids don't zigzag. But this thing, this visitor, was maneuvering, making micro-adjustments in its trajectory as if politely dodging invisible traffic cones no one else could see. His heart, a veteran of caffeine abuse and taxpayer despair, found a second wind. Get me General Clark at the Pentagon. Now, he barked. He could almost hear history scratching a new page. Earth, soon to be minor footnote in somebody else's empire. Within 6 hours, the news had metastasized. World governments, usually slower than a drunk tortoise in syrup, moved with the speed of collective panic. Emergency sessions sprang up in the dead of night. Satellites re-aimed. Telescopes blinked wide open. World leaders, accustomed to squabbling over imaginary lines on maps, now stared up at the real, endless frontier with a shared look, the expression of ants watching a boot descend. In the Situation Room of the White House, Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood stiff-backed, as if posture alone could hold the universe at bay. She was young, brilliant, and had seen more combat than the average Netflix subscription. Yet none of her training, none of the blood, dust, or midnight funerals had prepared her for the president's next words. Captain Rodriguez, said President Hayes, you are our best. You'll make first contact. Lisa didn't flinch. She didn't smile. Heroes in history books didn't get to be afraid. That was a privilege reserved for their widows. I understand the responsibility, Madam President, she said. What she wanted to say was, great. I always wanted to die stylishly. Across the room, General Clark's face could have soured milk. This isn't about saying hello, he grunted. It's about protecting Earth's interests. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. The eternal mantra of men who send others to die. Lisa nodded again, feeling the invisible weight of every soldier buried under every flag humanity ever stitched. 3 days later, she stood on the bridge of the UEEDF Interceptor, Earth's last secret. To the public, it was a space station experiment. To those in the know, it was humanity's biggest middle finger to the void, an advanced spacecraft bristling with every trick humanity could beg, borrow, or steal from a paranoid century. Beyond the viewport, Earth hummed below like a blue marble drowning in velvet. Above them, just past the moon's cold shoulder, the alien vessel waited. Officer Martinez, status? Lisa said, her voice a scalpel. No aggressive movements detected, he replied, double-checking because his hands were shaking. Lisa considered that. They might be curious tourists. Or polite invaders. Or, more likely, scientists interested in conducting a vivisection on a planetary scale. Open a channel. All frequencies, she ordered. She stepped forward, uniform spotless, spine straight, hard hammering. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of Earth, she said. We welcome peaceful contact and communication. The words felt thin, ridiculous, the bureaucratic equivalent of throwing a welcome mat in front of a tidal wave. For long minutes, the only answer was the soft hiss of the ship's ventilation systems. Then, without warning, a shaft of light stabbed across the bridge. A hologram materialized. The crew gasped. Because standing there, towering 7 feet tall, skin shimmering like wet sapphires, for arms folded with the air of a bouncer at the gates of heaven, was something definitely not from around here. I am Ambassador Krellith of the Arcturus Imperium, it said in perfect English, the words sliding from its mouth like steel wrapped in silk. Your primitive transmissions were simple to decode. Lisa swallowed hard, instincts coiled tight. Krellith's 3 eyes blinked slowly in a triangular rhythm, the universal sign for we are being very patient with you, for now. I come with a message from Emperor Zalvaroth, Krellith continued. Your planet has been selected for integration. Lisa fought the sudden urge to laugh. Integration? That word had historically gone over about as well as forced dentistry without anesthesia. We are interested in diplomatic relations, she said carefully. Krellith tilted his head, the gesture eerily familiar, the way a man might admire a lobster before dropping it into boiling water. You misunderstand, Krellith said. This is not an invitation. Outside the viewport, the stars blinked, cold and unconcerned. Inside, humanity's bright future got penciled into somebody else's lunch menu. And for a long, terrible heartbeat, Captain Lisa Rodriguez, scion of Earth's last desperate hope, had a very human thought. Maybe I should have just stayed asleep at my desk. The alien's hologram hung in the air, vivid and unblinking, while Earth's finest stared as if someone had slapped them with a frozen fish. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood motionless on the interceptor's bridge. In training, they told her that first contact would be delicate, historic, poetic. Nobody mentioned the smell of recycled air and cold sweat filling your helmet when an alien 3 times your size announced he was here to collect your entire planet like a hotel towel. We seek peaceful diplomatic relations, Lisa said carefully, her voice smooth but her hands clenched so tightly behind her back they might as well have been welded. Krellith, ambassador of the Arcturus Imperium, tilted his head. 3 eyelids blinked in slow, ominous sequence. The crew behind her shifted uncomfortably. Officer Martinez, who had once laughed off the idea of extraterrestrial life between bites of cafeteria lasagna, now looked ready to cry. Honor is irrelevant, Krellith said flatly. The Imperium spans 10,000 star systems. We have observed your species for decades. Your technology, your wars, your culinary choices. Lisa wasn't sure whether to feel proud or ashamed. Given what Earth had achieved, 2 world wars, endless regional conflicts, and pineapple pizza, maybe the Imperium had a point. You have 3 Earth days, Krellith continued, his voice like a blade scraping stone, to prepare for your surrender. Resistance will result in elimination. Then, without so much as a polite goodbye, the hologram vanished, leaving behind the hollow, greasy smell of ozone and bad decisions. In the White House Situation Room, President Samantha Hayes listened grimly as Lisa delivered her report via secure transmission. General Clark paced like a wolf who knew the cage was shrinking. Their ship's positioning is non-aggressive, Lisa said, her voice tight. But the message was clear, surrender or die. Standard imperialist playbook, muttered Secretary Wright, who had studied enough Earth history to know that when a more advanced culture says integration, it usually involves plagues, slavery, and conveniently disappearing resources. Hayes pinched the bridge of her nose. 3 days, she repeated. That's not negotiation. That's an ultimatum wrapped in a corpse. Outside the windows, dawn struggled to rise. Somewhere beneath those skies, 7 billion people went about their small, stubborn lives, arguing over coffee orders, missing trains, fighting with spouses, blissfully unaware that their lease on existence was expiring faster than a bottle of supermarket milk. "We need options," Hayes said, though deep down, she knew what history demanded. When faced with annihilation, humanity rarely responded with wisdom. It responded with teeth, fists, and the kind of desperate courage that got poets killed and nations built. War was older than writing. Older than gods. If aliens expected humanity to roll over like obedient pets, they had misjudged the species that invented chemical weapons before basic plumbing. Across the globe, the news of first contact detonated like a second sun. Religious zealots proclaimed it was Judgment Day. Tech billionaires plotted how to monetize it. Teenagers uploaded TikToks about how they were so ready to vibe with aliens, bruh. And quietly, deep in old bunkers and newer labs, military leaders dusted off contingency plans labeled in case of unpleasant visitors. Lisa sat alone in her small cabin aboard the Interceptor that night, staring at a photo taped to the wall. Her parents, both dead now, her mother from cancer, her father from friendly fire in a war whose name had been forgotten even before the ink dried. They had always believed Lisa could change the world. Funny. Maybe she was about to, by helping to either save it, or light it up like a Christmas tree scene from Mars. She thought about Krelitha's cold eyes, about the calm certainty with which he had announced Earth's future, as if humanity's stubbornness was a minor scheduling inconvenience. Lisa smiled without humor. People thought war was about weapons. Guns, bombs, ships. They were wrong. War was about memory. The way a mother remembered the son she lost. The way an old man remembered his fallen comrades. The way a whole world would remember, long after the guns went silent, whether they had stood up or knelt down. 3 days, she whispered to herself. 3 days to remember who we are. Meanwhile, at a suburban coffee shop in Ohio, a man wearing a NASA t-shirt was telling anyone who would listen that he had totally called this, bro, while demanding a refund for his burnt caramel latte. Because in the end, alien invasions or not, humanity always found a way to complain. At 8 a.m. sharp, President Samantha Hayes stood before the United Nations Assembly, the most nervous crowd since the invention of public bathrooms. The room buzzed with the low, frantic energy of diplomats who suddenly realized that learning 5 languages and mastering diplomatic doublespeak wouldn't help them negotiate with a species that had 3 eyes and 0 patience. The threat from the Arcturus Imperium is real, Hayes began, her voice steady as a mountain in a hurricane. But so is our resolve. In the crowd, General Clark crossed his arms, already thinking 3 moves ahead, and 2 excuses deep, for when everything inevitably turned into a dumpster fire. Diplomats whispered behind polite hands. Some argued for surrender. Some argued for hiding under the beds. A few optimists wondered aloud whether an intergalactic trade deal might still be possible, preferably one involving cheaper smartphones. Meanwhile, out on the streets, humanity did what it always did best, panic buying. Within hours, toilet paper, canned beans, and alien abduction insurance policies sold out worldwide. Somewhere in Florida, a man welded a microwave to his pickup truck and declared it a defense turret. Humanity's finest hour, right on schedule. Deep underground, in rooms that smelled of old coffee and older secrets, Earth's true answer to the Imperium took shape. Hidden orbital defense systems, camouflaged as decades of communications satellites and failed experiments, began to power up. Experimental weapons, so classified that their own inventors sometimes got lost in the paperwork, hummed to life. Captain Lisa Rodriguez reviewed the plans in the Interceptor's war room, surrounded by holographic projections and officers who no longer bothered pretending to breathe normally. Project Thunderbird is a go, she said quietly. Thunderbird, the ultimate Hail Mary, humanity's mad, brilliant, desperate middle finger to the stars. A collection of misfit technologies, part Earth engineering, part scavenged alien tech, stitched together by the shared human belief that maybe it'll work if we hit it hard enough. Lisa remembered her father's words when she enlisted. War doesn't make heroes. It makes survivors and graveyards. Pick which one you want to be. She chose both, apparently. Dr. John Miller, back at NASA's Monitoring Center, watched the Imperium ship with scientific fascination curdling into quiet horror. The vessel hung near the moon, perfectly still, utterly patient, like a cat watching a wounded bird struggle. They weren't afraid. They were simply waiting for the paperwork to clear before beginning the extermination. Miller flipped through old transmission archives, theories stacking in his mind. Their communication frequencies, too familiar, almost lazy. As if they'd been listening to Earth's ancient radio waves for decades and thought humanity was still playing with wooden clubs and steam engines. They think we're stupid, Miller muttered. They think we're the cosmic equivalent of toddlers with fireworks. He didn't know whether to feel offended or relieved. Inside a dim intelligence room somewhere beneath the Pentagon, Paul Rodriguez, Lisa's brother and Earth's best codebreaker, made a more chilling discovery. Planet killers, he said flatly, pointing to telescope images. One image showed a lush world covered in forests and oceans. The next, just 3 years later, showed a ravaged husk, forests burned, oceans poisoned, structures like brutal scars across the surface. They don't conquer planets, Paul said. They strip mine them until there's nothing left to scream. In a rare moment of sincerity, General Clark muttered, "Good thing Earth already beat M to it in some places. Maybe they'll feel at home." No one laughed. Across the globe, cultures prepared in their own ways. In Tokyo, temples filled with silent prayers. In Paris, artists painted farewell murals across crumbling concrete. In New York, someone tried to trademark official resistance merchandise before the first shot was even fired. Even facing extinction, humanity clung to its absurdities like life jackets on a sinking ship. Lisa stood alone for a moment at the edge of the Interceptor's observation deck, gazing down at Earth's swirling blue face. Somewhere down there, a child was laughing. Somewhere, a man was cursing a vending machine. Somewhere, a woman was falling in love. War was never about nations, or politics, or flags. It was about those moments, the messy, clumsy, beautiful little moments people built their lives around. War was about deciding if those moments were worth fighting for. Lisa inhaled slowly. The air tasted metallic, sharp with the coming storm. She whispered to herself, too quietly for anyone to hear. "Come and get us, you blue-skinned bastards." Back at NASA, Dr. John Miller reviewed the latest reports, sipped burnt coffee, and updated the defense readiness status. From screwed to extra screwed. At least it was good to be accurate for once. The final briefing for Operation Thunderbird took place in a room so secure that even conspiracy theorists would have blushed at the clearance level. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood at the center, the Interceptor's holographic table casting a grim glow across her face. Around her, the bridge officers stiffened, not out of military protocol, but because fear had a particular way of locking your muscles and stealing your saliva. "Thunderbird assets are in position," Officer Martinez reported, pulling up a tactical display. On the screen, hundreds of dots blinked in orbit, scattered like careless breadcrumbs. Each, a wolf in sheep's clothing, a weapon disguised as junk, waiting for the kill signal. Power readings nominal. Shield generator stable, Martinez continued, reciting the data like prayers from a dying religion. Lisa nodded once. No grand speech. No promises. They all knew what was coming. You didn't fight gods with hope. You fought them with cunning, with rage, and a generous serving of reckless stupidity. At precisely 0900 hours, the Imperium scout ships moved into attack formation, smooth, effortless, confident. Their fleet gleamed under the harsh sunlight, sharp-edged and predatory, like a pack of wolves approaching a wounded deer. On the Interceptor's bridge, tension snapped taut. Lisa stood still, hands behind her back, heartbeat slow and deadly. "Wait for it," she murmured. Down in Earth's bunkers, generals wiped sweat from their brows and muttered prayers they hadn't believed since childhood. In makeshift shelters, civilians clutched radios, clutched each other, clutched fading hopes. War wasn't just bombs and bullets. It was the unbearable, slow-motion waiting, the endless second before the first scream. The scout ships hit Earth's atmosphere at supersonic speeds, targeting missile defense arrays and military bases with mechanical efficiency. Their weapons ignited in dazzling flashes. But just as they fired the first shots, Earth's junk satellites awoke. Panels slid open. Cannons unfolded like wings of wrath. Across the sky, the hidden teeth of Operation Thunderbird bared themselves. The first plasma beams lanced through the void, clean and surgical, punching holes in the Imperium formation. One alien ship, sleek and cruel, was sliced clean in half, its death spinning silently across the stars. Another erupted in a blinding white blossom, a bloom of fire and vaporized arrogance. In the command center buried beneath Nevada's sands, Admiral Eric Daniels watched the feed with grim satisfaction. "How many hits?" he barked. 17 enemy vessels disabled, Dr. Susan Wright replied, voice taut with disbelief. 3 destroyed. And casualties? The room hesitated. Minimal, so far, someone said. Which, in military terms, meant only slightly worse than apocalyptic. Daniels grunted. In war, minimal casualties was a bit like being only mildly pregnant, technically better, but still ending badly. On the Interceptor, Lisa launched the second phase. All hands, battle stations. Engage offensive pattern Delta 12, she ordered. Martinez nodded, face pale but determined. Earth's fighters swarmed from hidden launch bays, tiny gnats against the towering Imperium craft, but gnats carrying poison stingers. In space, size meant little. A well-placed shot at a ship's engine core could turn a 10-mile-long dreadnought into expensive shrapnel. Somewhere near the Indian Ocean, a retired history professor sat on his rooftop, clutching an ancient field radio. He muttered to himself. It's always the same. Every empire thinks it's invincible, until some barefoot farmer with a rock ruins their day. History wasn't a story of triumphs. It was a graveyard of arrogance, a library of fools who mistook temporary victories for permanent dominion. Lisa remembered that now, as the Interceptor banked hard, plasma fire roaring past their hull. War wasn't fair. War wasn't glorious. War was survival at its ugliest, bloodiest, most stubborn core. And Earth had spent the last few millennia perfecting the art of ugly, stubborn survival. The Imperium's surviving scouts tried to retreat, their formation breaking like ice under a hammer. But Earth wasn't done. The orbital platforms retargeted, adjusting aim mid-fire, herding the fleeing ships into predictable corridors. Fighters picked them off like vultures plucking at a carcass. One alien ship made a last, desperate run toward the planet's surface. Its trajectory locked onto an empty field somewhere in rural Nebraska. The farmers there, noticing the flaming comet descending, calmly walked inside, grabbed a couple of lawn chairs and a 6-pack of beer, and settled in to watch. When future historians studied humanity's reaction to the end times, that moment, middle-aged men in overalls raising a toast to a plummeting death machine, would require no further explanation. Back in orbit, as the last Imperium vessel exploded in a final gout of white-hot vengeance, the Interceptor crew let out the breaths they hadn't realized they were holding. Lisa leaned over her console, sweat soaking her collar. "Casualty report?" she asked. Martinez scanned the feed. 14 satellites lost, 3 defense platforms damaged, 2 pilots missing, he said. Could have been worse. Lisa allowed herself a small, grim smile. Worse, she muttered. Hell, for Earth, this counts as a good Tuesday. In the sealed corridors beneath Nevada's sands, Admiral Eric Daniels paced a scar across the polished concrete. Operation Thunderbird had bought them time, precious, bloody time, but time alone had never saved anyone. It was what you did with the ticking seconds that decided whether you lived, died, or ended up a minor footnote in someone else's colonization ledger. Status report, he barked. Dr. Susan Wright stood by the tactical console, fingers flying over the glowing interface. Virus delivery systems ready. Ground forces activated. Satellite network at 87% operational capacity. She paused, looking older than her 40 years. You know this won't be enough if they bring their full fleet. Daniels grunted. In war, there was no such thing as enough. You just had what you had, duct tape, stubbornness, and the naive hope that maybe the other guy would somehow screw up worse than you did. Far above, on the Interceptor's bridge, Lisa Rodriguez reviewed the final mission parameters. Every pilot, every technician, every stubborn soul in Earth's cobbled-together defense was now a stitch in the world's last desperate quilt. Phase 2 is ready, Martinez said. Lisa nodded, staring out at the dark velvet of space. The Imperium hadn't retreated after the first beating. They had simply paused, regrouping, calculating, preparing to return with more teeth. That was war in a nutshell, two sides taking turns breaking each other until one forgot why they started. Lisa's fingers brushed the patch on her sleeve, an old Earth flag, its colors faded but defiant. She thought about her brother, Paul, somewhere deep in a windowless room, wrestling alien code with the stubbornness only a Rodriguez could muster. She thought about her parents, and all the parents who wouldn't get a second chance after today. Memory sharpened pain into purpose. If the Imperium wanted Earth, they'd have to pry it from a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of making every invasion a regrettable investment. Down in the classified bowels of Research Facility 47, Dr. Laura Chen hunched over a microscope, her mind racing faster than the cooling fans humming in the background. The captured Imperium biotech samples squirmed under magnification, living circuits, biological alloys, organic weaponry fused with cold, cruel precision. And yet, when she had accidentally exposed a sample to a harmless Earth bacterium, something remarkable had happened. It had withered. Collapsed. The mighty alien tech had less microbial resistance than a first-year medical student during flu season. Laura moved fast. They didn't need to destroy the Imperium ships. They just needed to infect them, rot them from the inside out. She called it Project Typhoon. A biovirus that would target only the organic systems, leaving Earth's own tech untouched. The beauty of it made her stomach twist. Bioweapons were the domain of cowards and tyrants, she had once believed. Now, facing extinction, she realized the truth. Principles were luxuries you could afford when you weren't staring down the barrel of genocide. Elsewhere, in the dusty chaos of the global intelligence web, Paul Rodriguez slammed his coffee cup down with a triumphant clang. I found it, he shouted at the stunned analysts around him. The Imperium supply lines. Their whole logistics network. It's fragile as hell. John Miller leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the data feed. Dozens of planets, linked like arteries to the heart of an empire too bloated to protect all its vital organs at once. If we hit these nodes, Paul said, we don't just hurt them, we starve them. Miller whistled low. How very human of us, he said. Nothing says welcome to Earth like a well-planned logistical nightmare. Lisa assembled with the Defense Council via encrypted hololink that evening. The grim faces of Admiral Daniels, Dr. Wright, Dr. Chen, Paul, and Commander Barnes flickered into view. 3 advantages, Daniels said without ceremony. He ticked them off on thick fingers. 1. Imperium command is rigid. Slow to adapt. 2. Their biotech can be infected. 3. Their supply chains are laughably exposed. He looked into the camera, at every leader listening worldwide. Earth won't survive playing by their rules. So we're going to play dirty, fast, and loud. Across the globe, old rivals clinked glasses over trembling hands, signing emergency alliances faster than Vegas weddings. If they were going to die, they were going to die standing. Preferably flipping the bird as they went. Back in the depths of the Interceptor, Lisa strapped herself into her command chair, feeling the weight of it settle across her like a second skin. The orders were simple. Survive. Infect. Disrupt. Break their backs before they broke humanity's spirit. Operation Typhoon would launch in 36 hours. Lisa allowed herself one last bitter smile, recalling the final update from engineering. Virus deployment pods are functional. Side effect, they might smell like rotten eggs in space. She exhaled slowly, closed her eyes for a moment, and thought, "Great. We'll save the planet and stink up the galaxy doing it." The Imperium fleet returned exactly 1 month after Krelitha's ultimatum, right on schedule, right on cue, as if following a cosmic script no human had ever agreed to read. Sensors across Earth's orbit screamed warnings as the first wave of warships surged forward, dark behemoths trailing contempt in their wake. They didn't slow down. They didn't hesitate. Why would they? From their view, it wasn't a battle. It was pest control. In Nevada's underground war room, Admiral Daniels stood hunched over the tactical feed, grim as a man attending his own sentencing. "They're splitting into 3 attack groups," Susan Wright said, voice clipped. "Standard sweeping formation. Heavy frontal push." Daniels grunted. Classic Imperium arrogance: show up loud, punch hard, expect everyone else to collapse from existential embarrassment. "Initiate Phase 2, he said. All across low Earth orbit, satellites disguised as debris, dead probes, and half-failed science projects blossomed open like deadly flowers. Hidden weapons powered up, grids linked, targeting reticles snapped into place. Thunderbird was no longer a theory. It was a goddamn welcoming committee. On the Interceptor's bridge, Lisa Rodriguez braced as the ship slipped from the moon's shadow. The Earth gleamed blue and stubborn behind them, as if daring the universe to try its luck. "All systems green," Martinez reported. The first wave of Earth's fighters, tiny, scrappy, fast, roared from hidden launch cradles. Not sleek. Not beautiful. But then again, neither was survival. Lisa's voice cut through the tension. "Remember your training. Hit and run. Break their formation. Out there, size didn't matter." The Imperium ships were vast, heavy, and beautifully engineered for frontal assault, perfect monuments to a civilization that had apparently never lost a real war. And that was their first mistake. Nothing teaches you about survival like losing spectacularly at least once. Commander William Barnes led the first fighter wave. Veteran of 5 failed marriages and 3 ugly ground wars, Barnes understood attrition on a spiritual level. He barked into the comms. "Alpha Wing, target their engine exhausts. Stay mobile. Stay angry." Earth's fighters dove in, threading between Imperium ships, peppering them with precision strikes. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't elegant. It was a bar brawl in 0G, and humanity had brought broken bottles. Meanwhile, in Research Facility 47, Dr. Laura Chen stared at the pathogen deployment readings. The typhoon virus was dispersing beautifully, microscopic death riding every vapor cloud, slipping through every hull breach, worming its way into organic circuits. Inside the enemy ships, living systems coughed, shuddered, and began the slow, glorious process of catastrophic failure. It was a brutal symphony. Artificial muscles locked up. Control systems spasmed. Weapons powered down mid-charge, leaving once proud vessels drifting like stunned whales. Laura's hand trembled slightly as she logged the spread pattern. She remembered the oath she'd taken at university, do no harm, and wondered if ancient Earth doctors had ever imagined fighting genocidal star empires when they wrote that one. Principles, like wine, tended to spoil under bombardment. In a dim back room of the Interceptor, Paul Rodriguez, fingers blackened from hours of jury-rigged hacking, finished the final decrypt. "Got it," he panted into the comms. "I've uploaded false orders into their command net. Conflicting signals. They'll eat each other alive." Lisa, hearing this over the bridge feed, felt a grim, vicious pride tighten her chest. You didn't need superior firepower to win. You just needed to break their belief that they couldn't lose. Earth had learned that lesson in 1,000 bloody ways. Against empires, against tyrants, against itself. War wasn't about winning clean. It was about surviving dirty. The Imperium ships began to stumble. Formations frayed. Fire patterns lost rhythm. Ships collided as confused crews acted on contradictory orders, shields dropped in the wrong directions, friendly fire flashed through their ranks like divine judgment. From the Nevada bunker, Daniels allowed himself the rare luxury of a genuine smile. "Looks like their perfect empire just tripped over a banana peel," he muttered. "But even chaos has its price." 3 orbital platforms were lost in the first hour, vaporized by lucky retaliatory strikes. 12 fighter pilots died, their names already inked into history, unceremoniously, beneath the words "Mission Success, Phase 2. Loss tasted bitter, even when victory loomed. Lisa made a silent promise to each one. If she survived this day, she'd remember every single goddamn name. The battle tipped. Earth, fragile and furious, clawed a notch into the Imperium's armor. For the first time in recorded history, a world had stood toe-to-toe with a galactic empire and punched it in the throat. Inside the battered flagship of the Imperium fleet, Grand Marshal Vexer snarled at the collapsing tactical display. "Primitive vermin," he hissed, smashing a clawed hand onto the console. He had underestimated the one thing no sensor scan could quantify: humanity's pathological refusal to stay politely conquered. In the Interceptor's comms bay, Martinez slumped back in his chair, eyes wide with disbelief. "Captain," he said, I think we're winning." Lisa raised an eyebrow, voice dry as sandpaper. "Great. Someone call Guinness. Fast. Before we screw it up again." The battle had ended not with a bang, but with a series of chaotic, half-coherent explosions, like a drunk fireworks display engineered by angry toddlers. Above Earth, debris spun silently, pieces of Imperium warships, fragments of broken dreams, and the occasional unfortunate satellite that happened to be in the wrong orbit at the wrong time. On the Interceptor's bridge, Captain Lisa Rodriguez stared at the tactical feed, her body frozen in a strange, unfamiliar paralysis. Victory wasn't supposed to feel like this, hollow, metallic, and too quiet. The kind of silence that stretched between heartbeats and whispered, "What now?" "Enemy fleet retreating," Officer Martinez said, voice cracking slightly. Earth wasn't safe. Earth wasn't secure. But for the first time in living memory, Earth wasn't kneeling either. In Nevada's war room, Admiral Daniels ripped the remains of his third energy drink from his hand and let it fall to the floor. Across the holographic map, Imperium signatures flickered and faded. Retreating. Regrouping. Remembering, maybe, that prey could sometimes grow teeth sharp enough to tear gods apart. Daniels leaned heavily against the table, one hand pressed to the ache blooming behind his ribs. He wasn't young anymore. He wasn't built for winning. Victory demanded things nobody ever wrote on medals. Compromises. Betrayals. 1,000 tiny, necessary sins stacked like bricks until you built a monument to your own survival. "Begin cleanup protocols," he muttered, throat dry. "And somebody find me a goddamn aspirin the size of Nebraska." Down in the medical bay, the casualties lined the walls like broken promises. Dr. Susan Wright moved between the wounded with mechanical efficiency, setting bones, cauterizing wounds, whispering the same hollow encouragement she barely believed anymore. Each face she touched was a reminder. Victory had a body count. The only real difference between winning and losing was which side got to tell themselves it had all been worth it. She paused by one young pilot, face soot-smudged and unconscious, his fingers still twitching as if gripping invisible controls. Susan closed his hand gently. "You made it count, kid," she whispered. "Even if none of us really know what the hell counting looks like anymore." Above the planet, the Interceptor drifted into a new formation alongside the freshly arrived Free Worlds Coalition fleet. Ships of strange designs and patchwork banners orbited Earth, symbols of rebellion, of battered hope stitched together by necessity and stubbornness. On the main view, a transmission blinked open. Admiral Zorkel of the Free Worlds Coalition appeared, tall, gray-skinned, and carrying the exhausted dignity of someone who had spent far too many years losing politely. "To the defenders of Earth," Zorkel said, his voice resonant, "we stand with you. We have fought alone for too long. Today, we begin something new." Lisa stared at the screen, torn between pride and a bone-deep suspicion that something new was just another name for something equally stupid, but in different colors. Humanity had a gift for repackaging failure as optimism. Apparently, they weren't the only ones. In the days that followed, Earth became a planet of broken things stitched together with frantic determination. Emergency reconstruction teams worked alongside alien engineers. New alliances were drafted with the speed and precision of people who knew they might not live long enough to regret them. At an improvised ceremony among the ruins of the United Nations building, President Hayes pinned the Admiral's insignia onto Lisa's battered uniform. "You've earned this," Hayes said. Lisa didn't feel like she had earned anything except maybe a bottle of whiskey and a week of uninterrupted screaming. But she nodded, because that's what heroes did. Smile. Nod. Pretend victory didn't taste like blood and compromise. In a quiet observatory outside the city, Dr. John Miller leaned against the railing, staring up at the new night sky. There were more stars now. More ships. More trouble waiting with open arms. John lit a cigarette, an old, bad habit from his grad school days, and wondered if humanity had just swapped one flavor of extinction for another. The stars looked the same as always, cold, distant, and beautiful enough to break something inside your chest. Maybe that was the real secret of war. Not winning. Just living long enough to be disappointed by the next fight. 6 months later, the newly commissioned Earth flagship, the Defiance, soared into the sky, sleek, lethal, and held together by equal parts engineering, duct tape, and raw spite. Lisa Rodriguez stood on its bridge, her new crew bustling around her with the nervous energy of people who absolutely understood they were about to piss off the universe even harder. Their mission was simple. Join the Free Worlds Coalition fleet. Strike back against the Imperium. Make damn sure Earth's name was remembered, even if it was just as that one backwater rock that bit the hand trying to pet it. Lisa tugged her gloves tighter, feeling the hum of the engines beneath her boots. Space stretched before them, wide, indifferent, endless. "All systems go," Martinez said. Lisa smirked. "Perfect," she said. "Let's go teach the galaxy why you should never pick a fight with a species that thought microwaving a burrito with the wrapper still on was a reasonable experiment." And so, humanity, bloody, stubborn, ridiculous humanity, rose from the ashes not as victims, but as a defiant roar across the galaxy. A single world that said no. A species that taught the stars a lesson: never, ever underestimate creatures who willingly invented nuclear weapons before inventing decent coffee. If you enjoyed this journey, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story to stand with us through the next battles and victories. I want to hear your thoughts. If you were commanding Earth's forces, what strategy would you use to defeat a galactic empire? Comment below and share your idea. Maybe we'll turn your plan into a future story. And don't forget, today's secret code is Defiance Rising. Drop it into the comments to show that you, too, would fight for humanity when the stars come calling. This is just the beginning.